Hello and welcome to the Historic Preservation meeting of Thursday, May 17th, 2018. The time is 5:05. Can we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Craig
Here.
Commissioner Doom,
Here.
Commissioner Morgan,
Here.
Commissioner Shire, he's absent, and Commissioner Barton.
Here. Item number 2 is report regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on or before Monday, May 14th, 2018 on the bulletin board outside of City Hall. Item number 3 is approval of the minutes from April 19th, 2018. Do we have any corrections or comments?
No. Move to accept.
Actually, I have a correction under item 7C, 1539 El Rito Avenue. That item was actually moved by me and seconded by Commissioner Cragnati.
Are we going to approve it or postpone it to
Do
the next
we
meeting?
No, we can
ask
approve with
for
the
a
correction.
Approve with corrections?
Mhm.
Okay. Great. So do I have a motion to approve?
Yes. So moved.
And a
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Okay, Commissioner Craig Nardi,
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan,
Yes.
Commissioner Doom,
Yes.
Madam Chair Martanian.
Yes, thank you.
Good memory.
Okay. Oral communications and having none. I don't have any cards for items that are not on the agenda. So we'll move to number 5, comments from commissioners, if we have any.
I have some.
Okay.
Next week, on Wednesday, May 23rd, 2018, we're going to have Celebrate Historical La Crescenta, the Walton Cup that the Historical Society of the Crescenta Valley got from back east has been polished and shined up, and it's now going to be enshrined at the library, the county library up on Foothill Boulevard. And I'd like to invite you all. It's on Wednesday, May 23rd, between 6:30 and 7:45. And the county library's blurb is, join us as we welcome the return of the historic Walton Cup to La Crescenta. In the early 1900s, this loving cup was presented to real estate developer Robert A. Walton as a thank you from the new La Crescenta residents. To hear the story of how the cup returned to our community, please join us at that time. And there will be refreshments. And it looks to be a good time by all. And then I would like to remind the commission and everyone in the audience and at home that coming up on May 28th is Memorial Day. And for those people in Glendale, I'd like to invite you to come up, if you're in North Glendale, at 8 o'clock in the morning. We have our memorial ceremony at Ocean View and Honolulu at 8 o'clock. If you can't make that one and you're farther north, there is one at Two Strike Park. And if that's too early for you, at 9:30, the city of Glendale has their own Memorial Day ceremonies in front of the City Hall on Broadway. And if you still can't get up by that time, before the barbecues, Forest Lawn down in Glendale usually has a very good program with President Lincoln giving the Gettysburg Address, and they have Civil War soldiers, and they fire the cannon and the whole bit. And last but not least, I would like to adjourn our meeting today in honor of all the Glendale veterans, and all of Glendale's armed veterans from all the different wars. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, so we'll move on to old business, and having none, we'll move on to new business. At 7A is 417 East Lorraine Street, proposed Casa Verdugo Historic District advisory review of proposal to demolish attached garage, construct addition as side and rear, and construct detached garage, to be continued to HPC hearing of June 21st, 2018.
And I assume there's no one here for that item. Hopefully, we tried to get the word out. So
Don't have any cards
yeah,
either.
but we do need a vote for you to continue
Oh,
the item.
okay.
So moved. Second.
Okay, very good. You guys are on top of this. Okay, Commissioner Doom,
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan,
Yes.
Commissioner Cragnani,
Yes.
and Chair Pro Tem Vartanian.
Yes.
Motion 4-0 to continue to a date certain of June 14th, June 21st, 2018.
Thank you. Okay, 7B is 1659 Ben Lamond, proposed South Cumberland Heights Historic District advisory review of proposal to construct new single-family house. If we could have a staff report, please.
Okay, before Dennis Joe provides the report, I just want to give a quick introduction to both of these items that we have tonight. This is similar to what we saw at last month's hearing, in that we have kind of an advisory review of design of two proposals. And just to remind the commission and the public why we do this, it's because these properties tonight are both in a pending historic district, which means it's a district that the commission has initiated into the designation process, but because that process can take a considerable amount of time over a couple of years sometimes, we recognize that it's advantageous to give the Historic Preservation Commission an ability to comment so that their expertise in historic issues can then be forwarded to the Design Review Board, which may end up looking at these. It's possible that one of these items will not have to go to the Design Review Board. It kind of depends on comments tonight and what we're able to approve through our standard kind of procedures. All new construction, so the first item you're hearing tonight on Ben Lomond has to be reviewed through the Design Review Board process. So all of your comments are going to be, we're going to be taking notes. We'll have the video record of it, and all of that information, all of your thoughts and comments are going to be then relayed to the DRB and put into the staff report that goes to DRB. And then that will inform their ultimate decision.
So you're not specifically looking necessarily for motions from us?
We do not need a motion because this is advisory, so we're really looking for your thoughts. So you can recommend, we have several recommended staff conditions. If you approve of those conditions and we want to get concurrence from the board or from the commission, we could also take an informal vote if we think there's any kind of split so that we could then convey to the DRB that the commission wasn't unanimous. So,
Right.
so we'll just see how that goes.
Sort of on consensus on any other things that might come up.
Right.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, I'll approach the board to give a brief presentation. Well, the applicant's proposing to demolish a existing one-story single-family home that's approximately a little bit under 2,500 square feet. The house was constructed in 1923 and it was altered subsequently in 1957. What they're proposing to construct is a new 3,045 square foot new single-family home, as depicted here in the elevation is the front here, and then the site planning is down below, which is kind of going to be centralized with a detached garage at the rear. Just to give you a quick background of the property, it's zoned R1 in the FAR District 1 zone. The lot is 10,483 square feet. As you can see, it's rectangular in shape, regular shape. It's already graded with a flat pad. And just to kind of go over the topography along Ben Lomond, it has an upward slope from going from south to north, so you can see that the existing property has a graded pad, but it sets lower than the property to the north, and it's a little bit subtly higher than the properties to the south, so you get that little bit topography that slopes uphill going up down the neighborhood. The property was included in a 2004 survey when a historic district was proposed at the time but was never designated. The survey assigned it with a 6Z, which it's not eligible for local, state, or national level, and it's not a resource under CEQA. Just to quickly go over the site planning of the new single-family home they're proposing, it will be oriented obviously towards Ben Lomond, with a generous setback, which is approximately 35 feet from the front property line. Once again, the detached two-car garage will be at the rear, kind of replicating the garage patterns up and down the neighborhood. The landscape design that they're proposing to re-landscape will include a variety of California shrubs and trees identified on wool coals or be-water wise. Quickly go over mass and scale. Staff feels the mass and scale of the property is appropriate for the neighborhood. The second floor of the house, shown here and also from this elevation, will be set back further from the first level, which will be 50 feet for the second floor and then about 27 feet from the first floor. The neighborhood is comprised of 1-story and 2-story single-family homes, which staff feels, once again, the proposal is consistent with the massive scale of the neighborhood. Overall, staff feels that the design is highly articulated and it avoids having overbearing massings and blends with the neighborhood. However, we do have some recommended conditions for the commission to review. Last, just going over design in detail, the neighborhood comprises a variety of architectural styles, which includes period revival, craftsman, minimal traditional, and ranch-style homes. The proposal is for a neo-Spanish style home, which we feel that relates with the neighborhood context and the architectural styles. The windows that they're proposing will be a fiberglass material with a recessed placement with a block frame with precast sills, which we feel that is appropriate for the style. And the overall finishes, which include smooth stucco and precast sills, and as condition, 2-piece barrel tile, which we're recommending, would have an overall design and detail that's appropriate for the style. I can quickly go over the conditions that staff has prepared for your consideration, which you can also add to as far as the advisory. Number 1, that the design and finish for the fence and walls is complementary to the design of the house. We just didn't see the detail. All we're asking is that the walls and the details prior to plan check, we're just asking that they all match. I think they're going to do that, but we just want to have that detail in the prior to plan check work. 2, the double front entry door at the front, staff feels that it should be redesigned with a single door with possible side lights to better coordinate with the proposed style, as opposed to having double doors. Once again, single door with side lights. Number 4, casement windows with button at all operable window openings. That's what we're proposing. And 5, redesign the picture window at the front here to be a single large pane of glass. Number 6 is to redesign the south facade in the first level. So we're talking about the first level here to add articulation and to consider recessing the door here that may be able to achieve this goal that staff is recommending. 7 is reduce the height of the garage. So you can see the head height here is a little bit higher and extended. And to provide a full hip roof if it's possible. 8, 2-piece barrel tile. I think they're proposing an S tile at the first and second levels, so that we feel that would enhance the design of the proposed style. 9, incorporate landscaping at the sides and rear of the house. So you can see that they're proposing, the side of the garage and at the rear, just to minimize the amount of hardscape and introduce more landscaping, and it can add more buffer between the neighbor, between this house and the neighbor. And last, just revise drawings to show gutters and downspouts and elevations. We just wanted to make sure that when it actually is being constructed, that the gutters and the downspouts are in appropriate locations prior to construction. So this concludes my presentation.
Wait,
Sure.
I have a question. I didn't hear number 3. They're almost the same thing. It's the double doors leading to the bedroom 4.
That's correct. Thank you, Commissioner. Number 3 is double doors leading to bedroom number 4 at the street-facing facade should be diminished and have a secondary appearance. This at the front facade, this is bedroom number 4. Well, we feel that this should be a little bit more subordinate to the front door here to have that hierarchy. Thank you, Commissioner, for bringing that up.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions of staff?
And I just wanted to share that I don't see the rendering for the project up, so I have that up on the screen. We also have, if it helps, we have just the basic drawings up here also that we could refer to as you're discussing anything specific, but we could leave this up for now, if you'd like.
Yeah, that would be great.
And then the other thing to know is that the property directly to the north, adjacent to this property, is a newly constructed building or newly constructed house by the same architectural firm that did go through design review approval through the DRB, and a similar compatible design with this one. Now, they're different in architectural features, but similar style and similar concepts.
Just curious, what year was that? Do you know?
The architect will be able to answer that question. It seems like a couple of years ago.
Okay. Thank you. So with that, we'll open the public hearing, and I have one speaker or one card from Patrick Zarabians.
Good evening. My name is Patrick Zarabians, project architect, 3467 Ocean View Boulevard, Suite B, Glendale, California, 91208. I don't have much to add on what Dennis already spoke to you guys about. Given it's an advisory hearing, I'd like to get some of your feedback, obviously. I'm here to answer any questions or concerns you guys might have.
How do you feel about the conditions that he read off?
So I've spoken to my client, and we're generally okay with with all the conditions. There's just I think there's 3 of them that we would like to discuss. I don't know if I should, discuss with you guys or DRB, but
I'm curious to hear what you think.
So
what they are.
I can go over them. So the first condition that I wanted to, I guess, go over is condition number 3, the double doors leading to bedroom 4. It says they should be diminished and have a secondary appearance. We believe they already do have a secondary appearance because it's on a wall that's already stepped back from the main entrance. The entrance is kind of well defined. Again, it is popping out. It has a nice archway. So I think it gives it already a secondary appearance. At the same time, my client is going to be using that bedroom number 4 as a home office. He'd like to be able to use the courtyard that we're proposing in the front. Just have to have direct access to that area. Obviously, this kind of architecture, usually you do see a lot of French doors leading out to courtyards and little spaces and things like that. So I think it's actually pretty fitting for the design. The other condition would be condition number 5, redesign the front picture window to feature a large single pane of glass. I don't necessarily agree with that. I believe that as is, I think it complements the style and also is more consistent with the rest of the windows in the building. I just think it just goes with the character and style of the house the way it is right now. I think something with just solid glass would be a little bit more contemporary. The other one would be condition number 7. Reduce the garage height to be more in scale with the house and provide a fully hipped roof. We don't have a problem with fully hipped roofs, obviously. The rest of the house is like that. However, the client would like to have to maintain the 10-foot ceiling height there. He does have some off-road vehicles. He likes to park in the garage. So that's basically it. I mean, the rest of the stuff, we're okay with. Obviously, I have no problem showing gutters and downspouts on the elevations. I already spoke to the client, doing a 2-piece clay tile, no problem. Adding more landscaping as buffer areas for the, for around the garage and the side yards and stuff, we're okay with. Redesign the south facade at the first level. We were thinking to do 2 different things. Either there's a dining room in the middle, if you see on the floor plan. Either punch that back a little bit by at least like a foot, just that portion, or punch back the dining room and the living room to create a break there. See that double French door right there? So either do a niche there, right in that area, or that, I don't know if I can show you from here, but you see up at the top on the 2nd floor, you have that one window that's kind of popping out.
Yes.
So basically draw a line there, punch the dining room and the living room going towards the street a little bit farther back.
Got it.
We're okay with doing either of those. Provide casement windows with muttons. All the windows in the house are casement. They already have. We've shown them as with muttons. Even on the door window schedule, they're called out like that. There's only one window that's double hung, and that's the one behind the plaster grill on the second floor above the entrance. Obviously, you can't open that this way because of the plaster grill. So either way, the window, you don't even see it. What else? A double front door. We prefer to have a double door, but it's not a deal breaker, so it's fine. I mean, we can do a single door, something a little bit wider. We would like to have side lights, obviously, if we do it that way. And then the fence walls, of course, they're going to be designed in a way to complement the rest of the house. We're going to do something totally different. So
Good.
that's it.
Thank
Anything
you.
else?
Any other questions?
No,
The architect?
no.
Can I just ask one quick question? It looks like your, the entryway or entry alcove is about 10 feet deep.
Yes.
Is that about right?
Yeah. We did, just because you touched on it, we did think about on the side where it's facing the driveway, we did think about doing like another archway there or some kind of niche or something to open that up so it's not a, yeah. So
Okay.
we've thought about that, yeah.
So it's 10 feet deep?
I don't
if
know
we're
the
looking-
exact measurement, but it's
About.
pretty deep, yeah.
Okay. So like when we're looking at it, the doors to the office, from this perspective, it's kind of hard to tell, but to that fourth bedroom, they're set pretty far back, right? That front entry.
You can see
Yes.
it. This area I'm circling right now.
Okay.
Is the entry
Okay.
projection.
Yeah, it's approximately, yeah, exactly 10 feet, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
On
Okay.
that side. Wait, I don't have any more questions of our speaker at the moment.
Okay. All right.
And I'll be here, so.
Yeah,
that's it.
thank you. We'll close the
Thank you.
public hearing for now. Okay.
May I ask a question of the planner? Okay. What do you have in mind for the double doors to bedroom 4?
Maybe perhaps having it have more of a subordinate appearance and have a better hierarchy. I mean, we're going to leave that to the interpretation of the architect, but not as large. But maybe Jay can kind of elaborate on that if I'm not hitting the essence of that too.
I think I'm not sure what the head height is. It's probably over a standard 7-foot door height because I think we have taller ceiling. So we have 9-foot floor to ceiling. So it looks like it's probably about an 8-foot height. I think it's more about the height. It's just proportionally, you have the large living room window, you have the large opening at the door, and then you have this large secondary door opening. So we were thinking of somehow making that smaller. If it became French doors, we appreciate, they're fine on Spanish-style houses. We don't always see them on the fronts of houses, but we do. It's something that's desirable in today's architecture, so we're seeing more and more requests for that. You occasionally do see it on traditional 20s and 30s Spanish houses. And so the idea was for us to not say, get rid of this, because we understood it was going to be used as an office and they have a small courtyard in the front, but find a way to make it smaller. When we write conditions like that, we usually write them fairly broadly to see if we get any buy-in from the commission or the design review board. And then if that's the case, if you have specific recommendations, we would take those. Or if you just generally agree with it, we would then work with the applicant before it goes to plan check to make sure it's smaller and subordinate, which is a pretty loose term. So
Yeah.
we have some
Yeah, I mean, I know what you're talking about. We see them a lot where there's French doors that lead out to a patio, but they are, generally speaking, smaller doors. The two doors together are maybe a little bit larger than a standard door, but individually they're smaller doors. And these sort of look like they're individually large doors. So
the other issue is when you see it as drawn, the Muntons create these kind of square panes of glass where traditionally you'd have more of a horizontally oriented rectangle of glass or vertical rectangle even,
yeah.
but not something that quite
So
looks like
square.
this.
yeah. So I mean, I think I tend to agree with that condition, actually, that just maybe a little bit narrower there. And the thing about the main living room window, it's interesting because I'm so used to seeing solid single pane glass in the older houses when we drive up and down the street. I always remark when I see one that doesn't have a BB hole in it, to be honest with you, because there were such targets for kids growing up. But so I can see how with the grid that it's keeping in with the other windows. But I also do recognize that it's in the context of the other Spanish-style houses in the neighborhood. It's actually very common to see a plate glass window like that. So I'm going to kind of tend to lean toward agreeing with those two conditions, I think. And the setting back on the driveway, I think I'm kind of neither here nor there on that particular one, Jay. But the rest of the conditions, those two I just spoke about, and the others I am in agreement with.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on specific conditions or anything you want to discuss?
Well, I agree with Commissioner Craignotti on what we have so far. I do believe that the number 7, the redesign of the south facade at the first level to increase articulation, I think that's important. I do believe if you're trying to do a Mediterranean revival kind of house, the front window, I don't know of any that are broken up. I mean, I see them all, not with many BB holes, but I see most of them that way. So it's different. It's not a deal killer, but I do believe staff recognizes that this is nouveau, Mediterranean. It probably would look best with a solid window. So that's my only concern.
Jose, if I can jump in, which I don't usually do, but I know this is kind of a newer thing. It's great for you to go through the staff conditions and find places where you agree or disagree, but you also have full purview to look at the design as it relates to the neighborhood as anything else, and this is true of every design review item you're going to hear. So I just want to make sure you remember that you don't have to just kind of run down our list. So.
Well, I did go and view the property, and in the property next door was 1659 Ben Lomond. It's kind of, it's 1665 Ben Lomond. It's also a Mediterranean revival kind of house, and it kind of bears some resemblance to the house that they proposed to put there. So I think it works well. It's not, it is will be a historic district, and whenever people seek to demolish houses that are in a historic district, we kind of have to look in a special light. But I do believe that thing has already been breached with the house that's north of it. And I think it's appropriate. The design is appropriate. I think that it works well, and I think it matches the house that's north of it, like I just said a second ago. So.
Okay, thank you. Yep. So I just wanted to address again the 10 feet at the entryway. Jay, I don't know if that seems like it's a little deep for me.
It seems kind of like walking into a cave when you're coming to visit.
Right.
But, yeah. So either, as Mr. Zarabian said, opening it up. It could be opened with arches. It could also be opened with kind of window openings, decorative window openings that let light in and break up the mass of the wall. You could also choose to kind of push it back into the house a little bit.
Or bring it up.
Bring
the door forward.
Or bring the door forward if you're okay with the mass. Yeah, bringing the door forward wouldn't change the way it looked from the sides. So it depends when you're concerned about the depth of it, if you're thinking the experience or actually the way it affects the mass.
But it's not 10 feet in depth when you actually walk through it, right? It's only 10 feet on one side.
Let's go to
the bedroom 4 side is not 10 feet.
Now, I think from the front.
No, it's quite a deep recess from the front porch.
From the front of the
okay.
arch.
I see.
From the front of the arch to the
Although-
actual door.
It is deep, yeah.
Although on the north side, the bedroom 4 actually comes closer to the street. It's
Yeah.
really only on the south side that you see that exposed wall that we see. It's kind of this area right here.
Yeah, if you look at
And
the
then
other
you can
side.
see it on the
it's not.
elevation. When you look at it from the north, when you look at it from the north, you only have this projection here, just 2 or 3 feet, because this.
Yeah, but from the other side, if you're going down the street.
So it's certainly, if you're okay with the massing and the way this creates a one-story volume facing the street, which is something we usually encourage to make second floors kind of recede away from the street, either opening a couple of punched openings here or possibly another arch. I don't know that you want to introduce an arch there, but
if generally a 10-foot deep entryway like that is helping offset the massing at the front, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, it provides
'Cause I'm
more,
not so
it provides more
concerned.
articulation at the front.
Okay.
It's not
that
it's not a
seemed-
mandatory feature, obviously.
That seemed deep to me even with a cutout,
Mhm.
but if that's, I'm fine with that, but I would suggest either a pierced opening or a small arch on that
Just on that
south
long wall, yeah.
elevation.
That would be nice.
And then it looks like on the plan on A31, there is a fireplace, or there should be a chimney, but I'm not seeing it on the drawings. So if you go to A41, the south elevation does not have the chimney drawn between the two windows here. So I guess the question would be, do you intend, you can just say yes or no, do you intend to build that chimney?
direct vent fireplace, so it's
Mhm.
going to be actually.
Hey, listen, we have to open up
Do
the
we have to
hearing or
reopen
not
and
talk
ask?
in the audience.
Okay, so I'm going to reopen the public hearing and ask you to come up, please.
Hi.
Hi.
So that fireplace particularly, because the second floor is already stepped back, is actually a direct vent fireplace. So it's going to be pushed in to be flush with the wall that's it's on, and it's just going to be basically a vent
Okay.
that sticks out of the wall. The other side we have the fireplace that goes all the way up,
Right.
the chimney. Yeah.
Okay, that answers the question, and I was just thinking if it was missing from the drawing, that would have added some articulation on the south side. But since you've already talked about maybe bumping in the double doors, then that'll help with some
Yeah.
more articulation on that side. Okay,
Okay.
thank you. So that's fine. And then I just, personally for me, Jay, could we possibly go back to the front of the house? And I'm looking at, oh, we don't have it up here on the drawings.
The rendering?
The rendering, yeah, sorry.
Okay.
For me personally, I just feel like there's a little too much hardscape at the front. I think the low walls, if you include the planter at the back, it feels like there's 3 levels of terracing almost going back. And then you've got the fountain as well. So and then I don't know how to describe exactly those cutouts in the walls. They're sort of like a partial quatrefoil,
Mm-hmm.
feel. For me, it doesn't seem to exemplify what we might typically see. When I drove the neighborhood, I felt like I predominantly saw walls or expression of the front yard that kind of followed the slope instead of putting some walls up, maybe creating some areas that follow the slope down, and then maybe have your fountain be more of a focal point. It just seems a little busy to me, and I don't know how my colleagues feel about that. Especially the wall at the very front, it looks like you're almost starting with barely an inch at the sidewalk, and then it kind of builds up, and then you've got that little grass patch in the corner.
And did everyone see, we just took a
Probably.
quick tour of the neighborhood. Because of the downward south-facing slope, you have different treatments at different properties, ranging from walls that wouldn't be legal. In a wall in the front setback has to be less than 18 inches, and I think that's what they've done for this property. And then you have some properties that just take the grade across the slope of their front lawn.
Right.
What they're proposing is similar to what was approved at the house built next door to the current proposal. But I do think,
I feel like the house next door, even though they do have some brickwork that comes up, it's still sort of below the slope. So it kind of goes down, and instead of protruding, I know you want to say something, so I don't think I closed the,
well, you should have. So
I should have.
I wrote down that you did, but
Oh,
I
okay.
wasn't sure.
Well, let me first check with my colleagues and see if you have any thoughts. And if anybody did happen, because I did pay particular attention to the house just to the north as well to see how they had handled that property.
And without getting concurrence or buy-in from the applicant, and this is a general statement instead of, we don't usually just kind of reopen hearings all the time.
Okay,
but,
that's fine.
But if you get concurrence from your colleagues, we can craft a recommended condition, such as remove the front wall and, you know, wherever else you want to take it. But we can certainly make it either a generally worded condition or something more specific to meet your goals.
Well, if we could open it, I would just like to hear what the applicant has to say concerning,
Do you have
about
any
the-
thoughts or opinion on
well,
how
the
you
more,
think?
the more landscape and less hardscape, I'm always for. So I wasn't looking at the house next door as far as their landscaping. I was looking at it as the style of the house itself, so.
So Jay, those pillars
Mm-hmm.
across the entry, those are at the 25, or within that?
No,
setback?
the code allows two piers or pillars flanking an entryway or a driveway that aren't higher than 5 feet. If they have, you can have a light fixture on top of them in the code, and our historic district guidelines don't address that one way or the other.
And that's within the 25 feet?
Yeah,
Oh, so you can do
Yeah.
pillars, you just can't do walls and fences.
yeah, and you're limited to 2, and you're limited to the height and the location, so.
I mean, to be honest, of anything, those are the only two things that sort of jump out at me as being a little bit hard among all that landscape. I kind of understand I think I'm understanding why they're trying to level out the lot, which I can appreciate being on a slope. So the walls, I think, especially if there will be, I don't know if that's grass or if there's going to be shrubbery or whatnot, I think the walls will probably soften a little bit as stuff grows. But I don't personally have a huge concern about the walls, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I'm just asking if there are any other thoughts about the way that whole front area is articulated with sort of those 3 progressive, levels of wall going back, and actually sort of with the form of the walls, they're kind of undulating, and I don't know, I thought maybe something a little more streamlined.
That would be my thought.
So maybe even just recommending that the very front low wall be revisited or reworked or
In terms of the shape, or get
Remove.
or get rid of, or
get rid of.
Okay, so we can remove the front low wall, and then you're also concerned about the shape of the other walls.
That's just my personal feeling about it.
I'm not bothered by it. The bump out, goes with the fountain itself, so that seems kind of appropriate, so.
So you guys are okay with the shape. What about the piers that Mr. Crignotti just mentioned?
I mean, I guess I'm indifferent, but I almost feel like piers are usually there to hold lights. Is that not necessarily true?
No.
We see them just to mark the entry sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, they're really not that bad to me, honestly.
No.
My personal opinion would be to reduce the hardscape as much as possible in the front and have as much landscaping as is
Yes.
possible. That would be
Yeah.
my preference.
Okay, and do you want to poll your colleagues or see if
Yeah, do
everyone's...
we have consensus on
I have,
that?
yes.
Would you agree? I saw you
Yeah, I
shaking
mean, I'm
your
okay with
head.
that.
Are you okay with that? Okay.
And
So
then-
again, this
and then
is just
should we-
advisory to.
And I
your-
did hear 2 of you talk about removing the first wall. Is that consensus or no?
I don't think that the wall needs to be removed. I don't feel like the wall needs to be removed.
Commissioner Morgan, do you have any thoughts?
I concur with what you've said so far on that.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I agree. The wall by the sidewalk that goes up along the driveway, it doesn't really protect a lot if it's so low landscape in the middle. So I would agree, remove that first wall, because you look at it and it does appear like looking at walls. Yeah. So yeah, I have no problem removing that. I would agree with that.
Okay,
Just
so-
more landscape and curb appeal.
So recommended, I'm sorry,
Yes.
recommended condition to remove the low wall and in general, reduce hardscaping and soften the overall
Yes.
landscape.
I mean,
Okay.
landscaping, DG in that area, something else could buffer the slope. Other than that, I agree with all of, all of staff's conditions.
Okay. So we'll modify the front landscape, recommend modification of the front landscape, recommend all 7 or so of the staff conditions.
There's
10.
10.
10, exactly, staff conditions. And that will be your recommendation for DRB.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. Move on to the next item. Thank you, Dennis. Which is item 7C, 750 West Kenneth Road, proposed South Cumberland Heights Historic District, review of proposal to demolish garage and construct new garage. Have the staff report.
Roger Kiesel.
All right. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Historic Preservation Commission. The last item before you this evening is an advisory review for a project located at 750 West Kenneth Road. It's in the far corner, close to the far corner. The applicant is requesting to demolish the existing on-site 3-car garage and construct a new 3-car detached garage. No changes are proposed to the existing single-family house. Staff recommends that the Historic Preservation Commission recommend design review approval of the project with the conditions contained in the staff report. The existing English Tudor Revival residence and detached garage were constructed in 1937. The proposed garage will be constructed in the same architectural style and accessed from, yes, sorry.
Is that a mic?
Sorry about that. So the
Quick recap.
huh?
Quick recap.
Start over?
Quick recap.
Okay.
Yes.
So we're the applicant is proposing to demolish the existing detached garage at 750 West Kenneth Road and construct a new 3-car garage. There aren't changes to the single-family house on the site. Staff is recommending that you all, the Historic Preservation Commission, recommend design review approval of the project with the conditions contained in the staff report. The garage as well as the residence are in an English Tudor Revival style. Were both constructed in 1937. The proposed garage will be constructed in the same architectural style and access from Highland Avenue, which is the same as what's occurring now with the existing garage. An administrative exception was recently granted for the property to allow the new garage to be 18 feet in height as opposed to 15 feet in height, which is our typically the maximum height for accessory structures. The additional height allows the pitch of the roof of the garage to the new garage to be the same pitch as the roof of the existing single-family house, so the pitches match. As noted in the staff report, the property was part of a 2004 recognizance survey for the proposed, at the time, Cumberland Heights Historic District. The property was given an NRHP status code of 5B, which means it's locally significant both individually and as a contributor to a historic district. There's now a new historic district proposed encompassing a portion of the previous Cumberland Heights district, undesignated at this point, and this district also includes the subject site, the subject property. So the pending status of the district leads to you all being the advisory board to the design review of the project. So that's why we're here, similar to the last one. With regard to site planning, there is a strong prevailing setback with the residences on the east side of Highland Avenue. The existing garage on the subject side is set back approximately 55 feet from the Highland Avenue property line. The new garage is proposed to be set back 29 feet. Staff recommends that the proposed garage be located in line with the prevailing setback of those residences located on Highland Avenue, which is approximately 39 feet. And I think Jay's posting that right now.
Subject property where I'm circling, subject garage right here, houses to the south. These houses are outside the historic district. The historic district boundary actually runs along the south property line, along Kenneth Road.
All right. So we're recommending that the proposed garage step back about 10 feet, so it's in line with the single-family houses on the east side of Highland. As mentioned in the staff report, the existing glass and metal front door of the main house doesn't match the door and side lights that were in place at the time of the 2004 survey. And the current door really is not compatible with the English Tudor design of the residence. And staff is recommending that this door either be legalized or changed to a design that really is in keeping with the English Tudor revival style of the residence.
If I could just add something, staff is not recommending that the metal and glass door be legalized, so.
Oh, yeah.
You said either, so.
Okay.
And I apologize, we don't have pictures of that. This has been kind of a process, and quite a while ago, we already reviewed drawings to bring a new door back that matched the door that was previously there. So we've already approved those drawings in the hope, and you may hear tonight, we'll see. But I've heard from the architect that the intention is to now implement those drawings and bring back the wood door. But we didn't want to leave that out of the report, even though we didn't have enough materials for you, so.
The style of the garage door on the material board is also inconsistent with the architectural design of the residence and needs to be redesigned to be more in keeping with the appearance and materials of similar doors on Tudor revival styles. And the material board is up there as well. And then finally, this is something new that I was just, as I was reviewing the case today, for clarification purposes, the plans for the garage describe a smooth stucco to be used on the building facade to match the stucco texture of the house. However, on the material board, it shows more of a rough texture, and on the material board, it's labeled called fine texture. So just for clarification purposes, staff recommends a condition be added that smooth stucco be used on the facades of the garage. Just clarification.
To match the existing
it.
garage in the house.
So staff recommends that the Historic Preservation Commission recommend that design review be approved for the project with the conditions contained in the staff report, as well as the new condition, clarifying the stucco finish of the garage. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you.
And then one thing I neglected to mention on the previous presentation was that we also have added, what you're looking at in these staff reports is basically the same staff report that DRB uses, which basically looks at 3 qualities of buildings that are kind of universal in terms of our design review approach. The first section talks about the site planning of a project. The second section talks about the mass and scale of the project. And then the third talks about the design and detailing specifically. For our historic properties, we're adding sections as appropriate. So for both of these cases, we've added a section about the historic district design guidelines and looking at the projects under the guidelines. I didn't mention it last time, but we did feel that the new construction followed the guidelines. With regard to this case, we do feel that the proposal does meet the guidelines, with the caveat that the guidelines encourage us not to demolish historic garages, but it doesn't say that's prohibited, and we can move someone forward in the process, and you're very much able to allow this. And the question would be working with the applicants to find out why they want to do this, what their needs are, and then kind of weigh the assessment of how you balance the originality of that garage or any other feature that's proposed for demolition in future hearings with the goals, and then with your goals, your ultimate goals for how districts should be regulated. So.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any questions of staff
No.
before we open the hearing?
I'll wait till we hear.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so with that, I'll open the public hearing. Don't know if the owner or the applicant would like to go first. Artak Daldunian?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Artak Daldunian. I'm the owner of the property on 750 West Kenneth Road. Our proposal is fairly simple. We just like to utilize the property better. I'm not going to be having any RVs or boats. That's what the proposition was for that very, very extremely large driveway, if you will, in front of it. I don't know if there are others that exist, but it was presented to me when I purchased the property that you can have an RV and boat together sitting on your driveway. So I'm not going to utilize either, but I would love to have the option to have a pool in our backyard. And whatever the staff is recommending as far as the setbacks, as long as it allows me to have a decent pool for my kid and for the family. So we'd be agreeing, and I do want to preserve everything pretty much that I just heard the new word. I thought it was English Tudor, but it's English Tudor. What?
Revival?
Revival.
Yeah, English Tudor revival style at the houses. I loved it. And whatever the recommendations are, we're willing to comply. Smooth stucco, rough stucco, whatever it is that they find that it's necessary to do. I guess the setback was initially different. Now it's different, but we'll comply with it as long as the architect says that it's doable. It's doable.
Okay.
That's it.
Cool.
Okay,
Oh, I do
thank
have
you.
a question.
Yes.
And
Yes.
So the way the garage is now, it's 55 feet from the street, and you wanted to move it up to 29, so there would be plenty of room for a pool.
Yes.
But now staff is saying move it back 39, in line with the rest of the houses on Highland. So how is that going to impact your pool? Have you been able to?
I would leave that to my architect to tell us. As far as my visual calculations will tell me, it still would allow us to have, it's not a very large pool. I think it's about 14 feet wide, if I'm not mistaken. And there's enough space, but that I think would allow us to still have the pool.
Okay.
So it should be fairly simple, changing architectural drawings,
Okay,
from my understanding, sir.
great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next speaker is Nareg Odadadi.
Good afternoon. My name is Narek Kodadadi. I'm the designer of this project. Office is on 213 North Orange Street, Unit E in Glendale. As far as the condition, that was kind of new to us as far as pushing it back another 10 feet. We started at 25 and then we pushed it back 5 feet to be at 29, 11, or 30 feet. So another 10 feet would be 40 feet from the property line. So yeah, maybe we can work out the pool and backyard and pool equipment and all that.
So it is doable.
I think so.
Okay.
A little bit tight.
Yeah, but it would be in line with the rest of the properties going down.
It would
That's what
be-
we're concerned about.
Yeah, towards going south on Highland, yeah, it would be.
Do you know what the distance would be from the edge of the pool to the back of the garage if it was 39 feet back?
Probably another 6, 7 feet, somewhere around
About
there.
7 feet from the edge of the pool to the back
Yeah.
of the garage.
Somewhere around there.
You might be
6
able
is-
to visualize it here, where you see the existing garage outlined here, and this is the proposed. We'd be coming back 10 feet, so there would definitely be room to walk around the perimeter of the pool.
The minimum is 6 feet, right?
Yeah.
Is there a minimum
5.
that it needs to be?
I don't think
5 feet.
That's
From the edge of
not
the pool?
not from a
Not from the
zoning
structure.
perspective.
that's a building and safety.
It's a building and safety regulation.
Okay, so there is a
I'm
regulation.
not sure that it's that big, actually. So.
Okay, I thought I've heard that it's 6, but I
Mhm.
did not study the code.
No.
Okay. But you think it would be about 6 or 7 feet
Yeah,
from the edge of
minimum
the
is
pool?
5.
Minimum is 5
yeah,
for
5
building and
would be
safety.
good.
Okay.
I think we'll be over that.
Okay.
So from the east edge of the pool to from the west edge of the pool to the east edge of the garage,
Mm-hmm.
you'd have about 6 or 7 feet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, as far as the pool dimensions, we're not really set on that either, so.
And then I noticed the addition of a bathroom and double doors coming out sort of onto the pool area.
Mhm.
So is there some perhaps intended use as a cabana maybe, or?
Not really. It was just, for the pool to have a bathroom close by. Double doors would come out to that area. Yeah, initially we thought some seating area, not covered, just on the lawn or
Mhm.
in playing area. That was it. But nothing else covered.
Does the existing garage have an attic?
Yes.
So when you have raised it 3 more feet, is that just for the windows to fit under there?
Correct.
Oh,
And then can you give us the thought process behind the, I can't think of the term right now.
The dormer?
Thank you.
Dormer's
The
fixing it back.
dormer, yeah, the dormer coming out with the 3 windows.
Yeah, owner wanted to have a nicer view towards the pool, towards the backyard, looking at the behind the garage. That's one. Another, possibly doing an ADU on top in the attic, if we can convert some area to living space.
Okay,
That's another.
okay, so looking
Option.
forward.
Yeah.
Okay.
So how does, okay.
Nope.
No, I'm good.
Okay. Any other questions of the architect? Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you have a question?
No, just the
Okay.
doors. I mean, there's not big.
Okay, the next speaker is Andre Aristov.
Good evening, and thank you. My name is Andre Aristov, and I'm the owner of 1456 Highland Avenue, which is the property immediately to the south of the project property. I want to say firstly, thank you to Commissioner Morgan for your fine comments about veterans tonight. Being one myself, I'm very grateful for your words. And also, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you. We've lived in this house for 20 years, and we hope to live in it for another 20 years. We love the neighborhood, the park-like setting, the wildlife that visits us, the big trees, the mountain views, and so forth. The proposed garage is 5 feet from our property line, so it really has an impact on what our property will look like. Additionally, we're separated, at least in this area, by a wall that's no more than 4 feet high, so we can see into their property, they can see into our property. And the part of our house that is facing this side is a bedroom, a kitchen, our kitchen, small bathroom, and a couple of other utility rooms. I must admit I'm extraordinarily concerned by this project from top to bottom, from start to finish. When I saw the plans for the first time yesterday, I was flabbergasted by the site, the siting, the size, the mass, the scale, and the purpose of this building, which I don't believe is a garage. Couple of points to bring up. We already talked about the setback. The current garage is 55, and they propose to move it to 29, and the board is recommending going 39. But I would request, even considering further back, because the 39-foot setback, those are people's front doors, their front porches, their picture windows. And to put a garage at the same level of that, it just doesn't match the current style, and would be a little overbearing to have, front doors of people's houses next to a garage at the current setback. I would ask that the setback be even further back. The other thing that, in terms of the sizing, the siding, again, I already mentioned it's 5 feet from my house. The current garage is, I believe, about 14 or 15 feet high, and it already towers over our house. Our house is much shorter than that, but it's been there since the 1930s, and that's what it was like 20 years ago, so we're perfectly fine. The other thing about that, the height of the current garage, is the roof is pitched very steeply. And so even though it's 14 or 15 feet high, it doesn't provide a view block. The current proposal here has the pitch roof that I respectively disagree with what staff asserted. It's not the same as the current house. The pitch is much wider in the proposal, and the dormer makes it even worse. So what I'm facing here, when I look out my windows of my house, is a wall that's 18 feet high, essentially, blocking everything that I can now see today. And to really point out the difference in pitches in the roof, if you look at the elevations and compare that to the photograph, I believe 5A, you can see how steeply pitched the roof is on the house itself, and then you can look at the elevations, and they're not even close. So to say that pitch is the same, I just don't feel is accurate, and the dormer doesn't match it as well. Currently, the two ridge lines of the main house and the garage both go north-south, and so I can see both of them, and they are exactly the same. The pitch of the house and the pitch of the garage, these two don't match. When I called the design review board a couple of years ago about placing a little temporary shed in my backyard, one of those you can get at Home Depot for a couple $100, it was 7 feet high. They told me I couldn't place that within 8 feet of any property line of any neighbors, so I didn't. The 8 foot for a 7 foot temporary shed seemed extreme, but that was the code. And now I'm being faced with an 18-foot high, 2-story high wall, 5 feet from my property. I don't see how that matches any code, how that can possibly be approved. The other thing that is concerning is the dormer. You already pointed that out. I don't understand why any garage needs to be 18 feet high. If you're putting cars and lawnmowers in there, that seems a little excessive. And a dormer in a garage, really? I mean, what's the purpose? These windows aren't, as the architect just mentioned, are for a view of the pool. Why does anyone need a view from their garage unless they're planning on having a living space in there? So I really question the purpose of this structure. And that's one of my main points in this application. It says we're replacing a 3-car garage with a 3-car garage. I don't believe that. I think we're replacing a 3-car garage with a pool house, with a rental unit, with something else that is not historically appropriate nor legally viable on this property. I don't know that, but that's my opinion. The dormer's a problem. The other thing is a problem is a full bath in the garage. A shower, a toilet, a sink, with a door inside the garage, not to the outside to the pool. Who parks their car and says, I need to take a shower before I walk 25 feet to my main house where I can take a shower? I mean, again, the full bath makes no sense if this is going to be a garage. And then the French doors that are looking out on the pool, again, it doesn't make sense if this is what you're building, a garage. So I would question, all of those components and elements. Let's look at my notes here. I guess I've made most of my main points. The other thing I wanted to mention is the house has been under construction for at least a year. since the owners moved in. There's been a lot of changes made to this property. Some are pretty stunning. I don't know why or how they were approved. There's a massive gazebo that's been built in the back. And again, if it's a family, a single family, why you need something that large is a mystery to me. The house originally, before it was sold, had beautiful wooden windows with divided lights and muttons. Those are all gone, at least the ones that I can see. They had muttons for a while, and then magically they disappeared. There's like I said, the construction's going on for over a year. With the noise, the dust, the power tools, constantly the construction vehicles has been rather disturbing, and to have yet another project like this seems like overkill. Behind the current garage now, there's a large pile of construction debris, and the construction workers are throwing 2x4s and pieces of plywood and so forth, and that raises huge clouds of dust that enter into my bedrooms. I don't know how any of that's been inspected, how that's been approved, what's going on. The house has already undergone serious changes, and this is yet another element. I'm a little suspicious at the intent here, and I'm very concerned. The three-car garage, as it stands now, is historically, it's an attractive building. This thing is proposed doesn't match the 1937 style at all. If you look at the south exposure, that's what I'm going to see from my house. That's what people would see, as they drive up the street up Highland Avenue. It's not at all in line with what I see. So, I humbly request that you consider denying this project. Certainly, you should go to Design Review Board to look at all these code issues, and to really question the purpose of this structure. Is it really a garage for vehicles and other purposes? So, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Quick question.
Yes.
Are you saying that the garage, as it's set now, sits behind the back of your house?
No.
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 Proportionately, it sits about.
It's about midway.
About
down my
midway?
house, yeah.
Okay.
So if I look at this picture here.
Yes.
Is this top one here?
Yes.
Is this your house behind the tree?
No, I'm to the right of that picture. My house is not in that image.
Oh,
You can see a little piece of my house on the site plan.
Any other questions of
No.
the speaker?
Thank you. Thank you for your service.
I have a question. Do you have more speakers cards?
I do.
Yes.
Oh.
Okay.
But did you have a question of the speaker?
Well, I just had, no, I got a question for Jay. We'll wait.
Okay. The next speaker is Steve, and I'm sorry, I cannot read the last name.
My name is Steve Zdroik,
Okay.
and
Thought
I
it was
live.
a ZD, but I was.
Sounds like strike. I live kitty corner across the street at 1453 Highland. I don't have all the concerns that Andre does because I'm not immediately next to the property. But my biggest concern, my partner Mike's, is that something 29 feet and 18 feet tall would look like a commercial building on a residential street. So I'm relieved to hear that the setback has been moved to how many feet now?
39.
39 is
39, and so the current structure is 15 feet, and this, we're gaining another 3 feet, which is still going to be a little more imposing. And, I don't have the same concerns Andre does, and I understand he has some very good points, but I am more concerned with the visual appearance of the garage doors and how close to the street it is, and I'm very grateful that it's going back, because I don't want to come out and see something that looks like a commercial garage so close. And is it 29 feet from the sidewalk line, or from the property line, or the curb line?
It's the property line.
The property. And where's the property line? That starts at?
It's right on the inside edge of of the sidewalk.
Okay, the inside edge of the sidewalk. Okay,
So you're basically from the curb, you're going in about 10 feet,
okay,
and then the property line, and then
okay. So, yeah, and the other concern Andre just brought up, is this going to be a rental, another rental or commercial unit, or is this part of a one-family deal, just a pool house? Are there going to be more parking, more traffic on the street? Our street is already a little bit congested the way it is. So, those are my two biggest concerns. And the first one has been alleviated, setting it back farther, like I said. It's now 39 feet?
Yes.
Okay.
correct.
Okay, and then they're going to also change?
Well, that's the recommendation.
Okay,
of staff.
okay, yeah. So visually, that's how I'm most affected. Thanks for your time.
Thank
Okay.
you. I just ask for a point of clarification? I thought in the report, and I could be wrong, I thought the current garage is already 18 feet?
No.
I don't think I had a height
So was
listed
it,
on the garage, and
It's definitely shorter.
right.
It says 15 foot.
I don't think in the permit records I found a height.
It does say somewhere on the,
On roof forms?
In general, we would base those numbers on what's reported in the architectural drawings.
oh, I don't think that it's 15 feet. I think the code is 15 feet. Is that right?
Oh, yes, if that's what Ms. Vartanian is referring to, yes, the code allows
I don't think that's
an
necessarily what-
accessory
yeah.
structure up to 15 feet in height.
Okay. I don't know that was exactly her
so
question.
I just
but-
see what I was, under
The-
roof forms, it says
Yeah.
they got an AE to allow the proposed detached garage to exceed the maximum 15-foot building height for detached accessory structures. The extra height allows the roof pitch to be the same as the existing garage. Okay, so it's just the pitch that's being addressed with the additional height.
Right, and then we did hear from Mr. Aristov that he doesn't think that the pitch actually matches the house, and that's something to consider. I went to an aerial trying to find that. It's really impossible for us to verify that looking at Google images, but it's something you can direct that be clarified before this goes further through the design review process.
But we don't know how tall the roof is, how tall the garage is now. Although it looks like someone in the audience is raising their hand that was a previous speaker.
Okay, I think we'll, okay, thank you. I think we'll finish the public hearing, and then we may ask one of you to come back up. The next speaker is Derek Cattell.
Hello, good evening. I live kitty corner to this proposed project on Kenneth, though. So I don't have the similar issues that some of the folks on Highland do. But so for the most part, I do. I like the design, and I appreciate the fact that the architect and the homeowner has at least tried to be consistent with the English Tudor Revival type design. My three concerns, or four concerns, really are to ensure that the pitch is exactly the same. Obviously, if it's a little bit taller or shorter, I'm not an architect, but I would defer to staff to ensure that that is, within the appropriate compliance. The one thing I do want to highlight is that, with the conditions that I'm really concerned with are the doors, right? The garage doors as well as the front door. This home at the corner of Kenneth and Highland is probably one of the most iconic homes in the I shouldn't say the most, but a very iconic home in the neighborhood. And I encourage the homeowners and the residents living there to explore and to look at or get an understanding of preservation, because as staff previously mentioned, this home was part of a survey in 2004, and it was deemed eligible for potentially landmark designation. And the homeowners should be encouraged and should look into that, because if they can preserve it, potentially they can take advantage of Mills Act, right? So that's just my encouragement and 2 cents there. But yeah, so I agree with the staff conditions. Again, front door, garage door. I want to ensure that the pitch is similar or exactly to how it is today, and the setbacks. I'm in favor of. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, those are all of the speaker cards I have. I think we missed anybody, so we'll close the public hearing and go to commissioner comments.
Okay. I'll go. That's okay. So one of the speakers spoke about a concern about this potentially becoming a rental unit. Really quickly on that is unfortunately not something that we can regulate too much. I would encourage anybody who has concerns about rental units and ADUs coming to the city of Glendale to contact their state legislators, who, in my opinion, in a major overreach, decided that they wanted to rezone the entire state to allow for rental units on single-family properties. So as awful as that sounds, unfortunately, the city of Glendale doesn't have a lot of control. That said, we do have regulations in place regarding accessory dwelling units, and it's my understanding that an accessory dwelling unit that is not actually a garage conversion, that would actually be additional living space, has to fall within the floor to area ratio for the property. Is that right?
I think so, yeah.
Right.
ADU is still new to all of us. so
Right,
Forgive us if we're not.
If it is new square footage, then yes.
Okay.
If it is square footage that's converted from a garage, no.
Okay. So in this particular case, and then does this property fall into the District 1, 30%, and then 10%?
That is,
I think that's part of Glendale
District
is.
1.
Okay, which I believe is 30% of the first 10,000 and then 10% of anything thereafter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So based on my calculations, the maximum allowable livable square footage for the property would be 3,750. Does that sound right? The lot is 17,500, so we'd have 30% of 10,000.
sounds about right.
Okay, so if we're, right now, that's 3,750 is the cap according to the present zoning. At the moment, the house itself is 4,190. So for lack of a better word, it's grandfathered in for being too large for the lot as it is. So if they're planning ahead to build an ADU over their garage, I don't think that that's something that the city is going to allow, at least based on the calculations. And so I don't necessarily think that that big dormer is necessary at that point. Aside from just shining light down into the garage, I don't think that there's room to eventually create an ADU, at least as a second floor. So I don't know that from a massing standpoint that if it doesn't provide a certain specific function, as in windows for living space, then I just think I don't think it is necessary, and it just seems a little too big for the garage.
If I may,
Please.
I forgot that we have to reopen the public hearing to offer the applicant side a rebuttal period. And now that we've stated this, they can possibly address what you just discussed, because it wouldn't be fair to say they couldn't.
Oh, okay.
And then we'll come back to that. I hate to break that in,
Okay.
but I realized I didn't want you to go too much further, so.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll reopen the public hearing, and if the applicant or the owner would like to come and make any more comments about what has been discussed or mentioned, brought up.
Hi. So as far as the pitch, detached accessory building maximum is 15 feet. We did the AE to raise it up to 18 feet so we can match the architecture of the house, match the garage to the house. So with that being said, it's not identical to the house. House has a steeper pitch. So with the AE, we got as close as possible. And as far as the ADU, we can convert any existing garage or attic space. Once this is final, we can convert that space into the ADU. So the attic space, if it's either 200 square feet or 400 square feet, that space can be converted. So it would be a conversion, not a new ADU building.
Because it's within the garage.
Yes.
Is that why?
It's a structure. It's a structure. It's an existing structure that's being converted.
And it can exceed FAR, if I remember
At that
the
point,
rules
it
correctly.
would be an existing structure that's being converted, so it's not going to trigger a FAR.
Mhm. And how much,
Size-wise,
how much do you
Square
think
footage?
you have at the second level?
not that much since it slopes. There, you have the roof rafters sloping down. I would say around 450, something like that.
FARs are limited to 600.
They are,
80
yeah,
is-
maximum
80
or
is-
maximum is 600. As far as the bathroom door, that's I guess we can have it outside. That's not. We were thinking of having the pool equipment right behind that wall. So, but if it's a major issue, we can have the door from the outside, not inside of the garage.
What was the suggestion for the?
Someone
Oh,
made
to
a
put a
comment
door to
about
the outside
door
from the
of the restroom.
Oh,
Other than that, stucco can match.
And you guys are saying that the garage now is already 18 feet,
Close, plus or minus. Yeah.
plus or minus 5 feet, plus or
No.
minus a foot?
No, it's few inches, I would say.
Okay.
okay, So we're already within the range. You're already.
Yeah, it's not a big structure. I'm still keeping the plate height at 8 feet or so. Still has the same components of the existing as far as roof material. If we can save the old roof material, the lightweight concrete, we can reuse that. That's another option we have.
Is that feasible?
I think so. Yeah. Lightweight concrete, we can save some of it. Maybe at least facing the street. We'll use the existing.
I have one question. On A2.1, looking at the proposed garage plan, it shows attic access.
Yeah.
Square. How do you propose to access the attic?
That's just the building code. You need an attic access. So.
Is it going to be a drop-down door?
Probably a ladder, pull down.
A ladder pull down. And looking at the dormer, is that how you say that word?
Dormer.
Dormer? It looks like the access would be right underneath that.
Somewhere there, yeah.
Okay, so it would drop down the floor of that?
It's a pull down. Yeah,
Pull down.
you pull down and the ladder opens up. You have access
Okay, so
to
when I
go up.
look at A3.1, south elevation,
Mm-hmm.
I see the line across with from pitch to pitch, or from end to end.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing that would be the bottom of the dormer?
Yeah.
Here?
So somewhere in the middle, you're gonna have that
Okay.
access.
Right, so the access would be somewhere in the middle there.
Yeah.
Are you looking at this making more of a loft, or a room, or storage space?
If it's an ADU, it's gonna have staircase from the outside going.
It will have a staircase from the outside.
An ADU, yeah.
And where would the staircase?
We haven't really. I mean, we've talked about it, but I mean, I guess after today we'll sit down and redesign.
And just so the commission understands, ADUs in historic districts, whether it's a pending district or designated, no aspect of the ADU that makes it different from the garage, it can be visible from the street. So we'd have to work very carefully to make sure that that stairway wasn't going to be visible from the street. It could also be placed in the body of the garage, although there still will be probably parking requirements within the garage if this gets converted. So we'll have to play with that. We can't say right now, but we can't say definitively that it would be on the outside because it could be a problem. So. Although pushing it further back will make it less likely that it would be visible, but we just don't know yet.
So looking at the dormer, what is the height of the dormer room? Let's figure that out from the top to bottom. Would I be able to stand up in there?
I think so. Yes, you would be able to stand up in there.
Because I'm going to guess it's 18 feet from
The height.
pitch top.
The height of that window is around 6'8". The facing back, the dormer windows, the three windows facing rear. The height of that header is at 6'8". So inside would be, yes, more than that.
And just so the commission knows, just in general, we consider habitable space to be anything over 6 feet. So once you get under 6 feet, it's no longer habitable space. So you can do the geometry of the triangle and drawing that line and figuring out about how much floor area would be up there.
Thank you. Well, one quick one. Have you talked to your neighbors at all? Have you discussed this with them?
No, we haven't. I'm not.
Don't you think it would be neighborly to
Yes.
go next door and ask them their concerns? I mean, he has definitely concerns, and he's been there for an awful long time. And to be a good neighbor.
Honestly, yeah, just because from the existing to the new, we didn't think it was much of a difference.
But
we're pushing back,
as we're hearing
front.
now, it
Yeah, I
is a
guess we're
big
here now.
difference.
Yeah. Okay. The existing garage sits, I think, 1.5 feet from the property line. So at least that 5 feet of buffer gives it some,
pushes it back a little bit.
Some room.
You're currently at 1.5 feet from the property
Something
line.
like that, yeah.
Okay.
That's much closer.
So you'll be pushing your setback in a little more.
Would you be building the pool before you build the garage? Get access back there with?
No, there's enough access. So build the building first and then the pool.
How would you plan on getting equipment to the backyard?
There's a
An
gate
opening in the
next
wall.
to it, and there's an opening from the streets,
Oh.
Kenneth side and Hyde.
Okay.
There's room to get back there.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so,
Jay, so visible from the street, what elevations are you considering to be visible from the street at this point?
We look to see what's visible from the street.
Okay.
And we make landscaping disappear, and we would have to make that stairway not be visible.
Okay, so so is it visible from the street, standing at the driveway looking back, or if we
From
were-
the sidewalk and the street immediately adjacent to the property.
so not if you were 2 or 3 houses
We
down?
don't go across to the north side of Kenneth and kind of look from there.
Because the reason I'm asking is because if you're driving up Highland,
Mhm.
you'll definitely see the big dormer sticking out.
Oh, no, the building itself can be visible. We acknowledge.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
But the part that
The
Historic
stairway.
District would have a purview over in terms of design and all of that are things visible from the street, right?
Well, no, you're the design review authority for the entire project.
Okay.
The historic district guidelines only apply to what's visible from the street. For an ADU specifically, that's why I mentioned it. ADUs, we have a very specific quality to make sure, and the basis of the thinking is thinking about an existing garage that's being converted.
Yeah.
Where we don't want someone, if the garage doors are facing the street, people are tempted to take those out and just put a new door to the unit, some windows to the unit. We want the garage to still look like a garage. And so the way the code's written is that all of those entries and windows and everything else, including possibly a stairway, would have to not be visible from the street.
Okay. So I think the dormer is visible from the street.
The dormer very well is
Is
visible.
visible,
We're
okay.
we're not pretending the dormer is not
Okay.
visible from the street. I'm talking about the stairway.
I understand. I understand. I was backtracking off of the stairway back to the dormer.
Yeah,
So the dormer is
The
visible.
dormer obliquely is visible. The more this gets pushed back, I think the less it will be, or the less prominent, certainly.
Yeah.
But it does seem, especially from the north, that the dormer is going to be somewhat visible.
Okay, and then I have a question about pitch of the roof.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at the house, the front exterior of the house, I look at the roof, and it looks to me like it curves rather than is a straight line in sort of an English style. There's a curve.
I sort of see what you're talking about. This is a Google image. I've never noticed that when I'm on the site, but it's possible the garage,
Yeah, I mean, if you
the
just look at the-
existing garage doesn't have.
I think
Right.
the DPR form probably shows the DPR form in the packet. Might
Are
be
you
a
talking
review.
about just a little curve above the entry?
Yeah, and it might be
Roof.
flaring more at
It's
the
like a
bottom.
Flares, yeah.
Well, over the entry, definitely. Are you saying it flares on the other gables or just at the entry?
It looks like
Looks
that's the
like
general style, is that it kind of starts steeper and maybe gets a little
I
wider.
think, let's go back to the Google image, because I don't think that the other gables are flared. This one doesn't appear to be. This is the south side of the house, and let's go back down to street view. Sorry. Wait. Okay, where's Highland? Too far.
We're testing your Google skills.
I
I'm
know.
admiring you.
Jay has great Google skills.
I'm such a Googler.
Almost
I
there.
think the trees are going to make this tough on us, but maybe from the south we can see it a little. This feels to me like it's a straight pitch, and it's only over the entrance where it kind of flares out to capture the entry porch. If it's a question mark and you want to add it as a condition to verify, and then, but
Well,
I believe the existing garage, which was what we're really trying to match, definitely has a straight
Yeah.
pitch. So.
Well, I mean, we're talking about exceeding the legal height to accommodate a pitch, and then we have this big dormer sticking off the back that kind of ruins the pitch. That just doesn't seem for me, it doesn't seem, it seems kind of they counter each other in a way. We're raising the height to accommodate a pitch that we're eliminating by creating a
putting
dormer.
on the back.
And if your choice is that you think the dormer affects the mass or the historic appearance of this, you can recommend that the dormer be removed. And if they come forward in the future with an ADU application, we can address how to deal with that at that point. So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, that's the concern I have, I guess, is that it's just what I said. We're accommodating a pitch, but then we're eliminating it with the dormer. And a dormer in general, one of that size anyway, doesn't seem to keep with the style of the house anyway, so.
So that the AE has already been granted, it's been granted, but that can just disappear if this didn't.
If the project changes and it just can't exceed the height.
It's just the order of things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to, because it's a variation from the code, we have to do the zoning work. You can think of an administrative exception like a light variance, and we have to get that taken care of before we come here. It doesn't mean that we're obligated to approve anything.
Okay.
And then was the interpretation of the ADU regulations correct from one of the speakers about the fact that it's within the garage? So if they converted the attic space to an ADU, it wouldn't count toward the floor to area ratio because it's within the confines of the garage?
That's what I was looking at, and it's not clear to me. I believe that is the case. If it's within an existing structure, it's not counted as floor area ratio. So while the house may exceed size now, and I haven't done the calculations, if the ADU is within the garage, then that wouldn't count as floor area.
Okay.
However, if a new ADU was built on the property, it would count as floor area. And if in fact they are at their limit with floor area, then they couldn't do a separate structure.
Yeah, my understanding, if I may, is that any ADU, any garage space that is converted to ADU can exceed the FAR.
Right.
So it's sort of a non-starter.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is also state law. I think
So-
it's state.
Let's say this garage was before us and it did not already have dormers, and they wanted to create an ADU on the second floor of their garage. Would they be able to add dormers to create living space above the garage?
On the existing garage?
On the existing garage.
Yeah, they could add a dormer on the rear-facing slope of the roof, because if we could say it's not visible from the street, but they couldn't do it on the front-facing slope.
So they could, although actually with this garage, they're only 1.5 feet from the property line, any additional living space they did up above has to conform to setbacks.
Not
right?
if it's in the existing structure.
Right.
Only new construction would then have to step back
Okay.
to the
5
setback.
feet.
5 feet.
It would be 5 feet.
Yeah.
Okay. So the city would have to allow the addition of dormers to accommodate living space above a garage, regardless of floor to area ratio.
Probably, yeah. We have limited design reviewability with ADUs, but we do have some in terms of compatibility with the existing structure and the overall design. But I would say a dormer on the rear of the existing garage we'd probably approve in some way.
Although if it's in a historic district and is visible from the street, we would have some.
We'd be able to say no to
Correct.
that. Or we'd be able to adjust the dormer so that it wasn't visible from the street, or reduce its size or whatever else.
Well, with the design of the garage as it is now as a garage, I'm not seeing that it's necessary even to have these dormers there. So my inclination is to ask them to be removed only because they're affecting this pitch that we're trying to reach. We're going to the trouble of giving the administrative exception to increase the height of the garage to accommodate the pitch of the roof, but then we're sort of eliminating the pitch by allowing the dormers, and I don't think the dormers are serving any real function at the moment. There is no living space above the garage in the proposal. So I don't know. I just don't think that my opinion is that the dormer shouldn't even be there.
So I guess since, my thought would be since the owner and architect have been open about considering an ADU, that maybe, to your point, if there is consideration that that space is going to be an ADU, then maybe drawings should be presented that sort of express what is intended to happen,
Yeah,
and show a staircase and.
But we can't ask for that because they're not allowed to build a new two-story ADU. It can only, it's
a little
the way the
convoluted.
system works. You have to get your new garage approved, even if you are planning, and we're not sure that they're definitely planning, but in other cases where we know that's the goal, you have to get your garage permitted and built, and I believe finalized,
Correct.
before you can then apply for your ADU.
You can only convert an existing garage into an ADU.
Got it.
So-
It has to be an existing garage before you
Cor-
can.
Right.
Right. It has to exist before
Right.
it can, before,
It can be converted.
yeah,
Any part of it can be converted.
before what?
Any part, attic, or
Correct.
whatever, any of it.
Right.
But this is a new garage, correct?
It
The
is
old
a
one-
new garage.
The old one is
and-
demolished, and this is
Will-
put in its place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Right, and so this one will need to be permitted, constructed, finalized, and then,
The ADU application goes in.
correct.
It needs to become an existing.
Yeah, got it.
Okay, and as far as the setback, yeah, I mean, I think the 39 feet seems reasonable, driving down the street, that they should all sort of fall in line. Yeah, so I'm okay with the setback, and then, yeah, the conditions about the garage door, certainly, and appropriate front doors, and the smooth stucco. All of staff's conditions, I agree with, including the smooth stucco. Also, though, I would like to add that I just think the dormer is probably not an appropriate thing for that
Well,
garage.
I have that down as a
Good.
recommended condition, that we can then see if we get consensus on that. And then-
Okay, so I also agree with all of staff's conditions. The setback, proposed setback at 39 feet as opposed to 29. I think I heard that the front door is already being addressed, but I agree with that condition. And adding the condition that the stucco at the garage should match the house. And then I'd like to make a recommendation, as suggested by the architect, that any roofing materials, any existing roofing materials that can be saved, be used at least at the front-facing garage roof. And then I think I would concur with your
Removals.
thoughts as well on the dormers.
Remove the dormer?
Yeah. Well, I concur with our chairperson today on what doesn't, and Mr. Craig Noddy also.
I'll add my voice for consensus. I agree the owner, you should have a pool, and removing the garage to make room for your pool is fine, and you want a new garage, then I believe it should be kept as a garage. And I understand you want the pitch to match the house, but if that's an issue, we don't need to raise it if the current garage pitch is existing, and you just want to move the garage forward to make room for a pool, then keep it as is, just move forward with the garage. So I concur with the dormer and everything. I know in my garage, I covered the top, I have a step-down ladder on the side, but it's a crawl space. I can't stand up in it. I just put Christmas stuff up there. So yes, I agree with consensus with the fellow commissioners.
So you're okay with the roof pitch as designed?
18 feet.
18 feet, yes, without the dormers, it would work.
Okay.
It does concern me that they want to raise it. I don't agree. If we're going to get rid of the dormer, we don't need to raise it the 3 extra feet.
Yeah, so part of my condition is that I don't feel that we need to exceed the 15-foot allowable height at that
Right.
point, unless staff really feels it's affecting the pitch.
I
They've
think
already-
we
in the design.
heard that the height is already
The height
near
is already
18
approved.
feet.
Right.
So
Oh, that
we're
we
not
can't
do
needing-
that.
Oh, no, well,
Oh.
they could.
Can
They
we?
could back away from that, I think.
I thought I
Well,
heard it was
it's-
raising to match the pitch of the
So
existing house.
They're now allowed to exceed code
Did I hear that?
code height limitation,
Right.
but if there's a design or a historic reason
Okay.
that the commission, we're charting some new territory here,
Yeah.
so.
That's fine.
So we'll explore that. The question I have is, the architect stated that the pitch of the garage as proposed is not even as steep as the house. The reason we entertained the AE was to get a steeper pitch than would be allowed for building of this size. The size of the building dictates the ultimate height of the roof line. And so we got a more steeply pitched roof by getting the AE. And so what we could explore is, you know, if there's a way to lower that or keep it closer to what's there, but I don't think we'd want to flatten the pitch of the roof beyond what's proposed, because it's already a shallower pitch than the steep pitch of the house.
Is the length, if I understand this correctly, the length of the new garage is the same length as the existing garage?
The depth of the garage, you mean? Like the actual garage
The
itself?
depth, yes, the depth.
I don't think
No,
so.
the depth of
width.
the existing garage, the existing garage is not as deep as the proposed.
Yeah, you can see here, this dashed line,
So go to this one. Okay. Right.
it's not
This is
too,
here, isn't
it's
it?
not that much deeper, except where the bathroom is bumping
This
out.
thing here, without the bathroom. Can't be much more than a foot.
Is it bigger than regulation? I mean, there's specific regulations for garages. Is it any larger than what's?
Yes, do we have a
required
maximum
garage?
size for a
Yeah.
garage in general?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Do we have a maximum size for a garage in general?
We don't.
We do have minimums, obviously, but we don't have maximums, right?
Right, we don't. At a certain point, they get it onto floor area.
Oh.
This garage hasn't reached that yet. So, and I'm sorry, what was the other question?
I think the question I think was, how much, is the newer garage significantly larger than the
Yes.
old garage? Is that your
It
question?
is not in terms of its depth. It's
Not in terms of-
wider, but it's not, the depth, which is what regulates how high the ridge is close. It's a little, it might be a foot or so deeper.
That's what I was reading. So there's no reason to have a great
But I
change.
believe the architect said that the existing height, and I'm not sure if I heard this, was about 18 feet.
That's what I heard the architect say.
That's
Yeah.
what I heard.
So the reason we were comfortable moving forward with this was we thought the roof pitch and the roof would be similar to what's there right now. And
Maybe not.
So maybe we can just put it as a recommendation for the DRB to,
we can verify.
Can verify that.
all roof pitches, plate heights, the things that kind of regulate how the geometry of the construction works. We can verify all those dimensions, and then we could also get a roof pitch for the house, just so we can say the house has a 10 and 12 pitch, and this has an 8 and 12, or whatever it's going to be.
Right.
So.
That would be nice.
since they are the architectural authorities.
Now, the thing I can't guarantee, though it is likely, but we'll have to have internal discussions, a garage like this doesn't necessarily have to go to the design review board for approval, given the interest in the community that we've heard tonight, and for other reasons, we have latitude in terms of doing either an administrative review process, which is a public review process, but there isn't a public hearing for that, or there's the actual DRB hearing where there is the public process. And between Roger and me and some of our colleagues, we'll be verifying that. So I just don't want you to presume it's going to DRB, although that's definitely a likely option.
Okay.
If it does, will the neighbors be notified?
Yes.
Yeah, we will notify all the neighbors, a 500-foot radius, or even if we do the administrative review, we'll notify everyone, so.
Can you read back what we proposed?
Sure.
He's got to read his handwriting.
So conditions 1, 2, and 3 in the staff report.
Right.
Condition 4, eliminate dormer at rear of garage.
Right.
Condition 5 is the stucco condition.
Correct.
Condition 6, roofing material that can be saved, should be saved and used at front of garage roof.
Mm-hmm.
Verify the roof height, roof pitch of the
I'll just say
Wait a second.
the existing garage, the proposed garage, and the house.
Okay.
So we have all of those dimensions clear.
And the front door?
That's,
The front
Sorry,
door
yeah.
is one of the first three
Oh,
conditions.
okay, sorry.
All right.
And then with the front door, we
Yeah,
were
the front
able,
door.
through photographs, and the
the front
architect
of the
was
house.
working with the designer, and we were able to come up with a design that very closely resembled what was there.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I think
Okay, we have
we've reached
concurrence.
consensus, concurrence. Okay, thank you, everybody, for your time and for your comments. With that, we'll move on to item number 8A, which is briefing regarding city council direction regarding deterrence of illegal demolitions of historic structures.
Okay. And the commission may be very familiar with why we are discussing this issue.
Yes.
When we look at 1420 Valley View Drive,
It is.
the property was illegally demolished, no permits were issued.
They just came.
It was recognized in the community, it was called in. The city is currently in court pursuing this with the legal remedies that we have today. What we recognized because of this situation was that the current city ordinances are not adequate to both be punitive in terms of hitting people if this ever happens again and making them realize that they had done something wrong, and then also in terms of just deterring people who find out, like, oh, that's kind of some serious stuff happening. If I do this, hopefully we can deter future illegal demolitions, which we'll do the best we can. So what we did was council asked us to come back with some recommendations, which we took to them 2 weeks ago, and they approved basically everything that I'm going to show you. So I just wanted to give you an update on what council's discussion was, what we presented basically, and then the process, which I come to at the end, but I'll kind of come up front with it. We're going to be making strikeout revisions to several of our ordinances that relate to this, the Historic Preservation Ordinance, the Historic District Ordinance. We might have to add something to the Demolition Ordinance, but I'm not positive, even though it sounds funny that we might not have to, but we'll have to figure that out. So we will be bringing those back to council, but before we go to council, we'll be coming to Historic Preservation Commission for review and comment. We'll be going to Planning Commission because these are ordinance changes, so it's required to go to Planning Commission. And then we'll be going to council with our final recommendations based on all of your input. So this is the slideshow I gave to council, and if you'd like me to kind of run through it quicker or slower, there's a lot here.
I didn't get to see that meeting, but whatever you think is the
Okay,
substantive.
it's interesting, I think. So,
Yes.
so the current policy, we're fairly limited in what we're allowed to do. We can impose civil and criminal penalties. The criminal fine is $1,000 per charge and/or up to 6 months in jail. People are never jailed for things like this in general, but fines are definitely assessed. We can.
So is the demolishing of one house considered one charge?
There could be other charges because it's based on permits that you may not have pulled. I don't actually understand that, so it could be multiple charges on one demolition. Temporary or permanent injunction can be filed.
But the charges are done by the city attorney?
What's that?
Who files the charges?
City attorney.
Okay.
Temporary or permanent injunction against the property owner to maintain status quo while things are in flux. We can also get reimbursed for costs incurred by the city during that time. And for properties that are on the Glendale Register, or the National Register, or the California Register, we can withhold building permits for 3 years from the date of demolition, which is a good financial penalty because you can't just demolish and then immediately start building the big palace that you wanted to build.
So we've
So-
always had this written in?
The scorched earth has been, yeah, we've had this, I can't say always, before my time, so it's been there for a while.
Why 3 years? Who chose 3?
Here, well, I'm going
Who
to talk
chose
about that
3 years?
in
Okay.
more depth.
All right.
So,
Okay, I'll let you wait.
so policy currently only applies to the registered properties. As I mentioned, we have less than 130 properties that fall into this. Obviously, we've got a lot more to think about. The current law does not apply to district contributors. It doesn't apply to buildings that are identified in a survey as significant. It doesn't apply to partial demolition, where you might demolish the front part of a house that has all that great character defining stuff and try to build something there. It also doesn't cover demolition by neglect, where people leave the windows open, take the roof off the house, and allow a building to slowly decay until it becomes a building and safety hazard. So, and that is over 1,000 properties, and that's a conservative estimate. I didn't go crazy on that, but definitely over 1,000 that we know. Before we started saying what we wanted to do, we started looking at what other cities do in the area. And it's not uncommon for cities to penalize and try to find ways to deter this kind of behavior. Los Angeles has a 5-year prohibition, so there are options in the range of time that you can prohibit development. Pasadena has a policy of rebuilding what was there to its previous appearance, if possible. If it's not possible, they can also prohibit development, and they have a sliding scale. It's 5 years if it's designated, 3 years if it's surveyed, and then all illegal demolitions would have a 1-year policy. We also, Pasadena applies to partial demolition and demo by neglect, and they also have a landscaping affirmative maintenance provision for landscape on the site. So if we're gonna have a vacant lot sticking around for a while, we wanna make sure the owner's responsible for taking care of it. And then there would be a provision if the owner didn't do that, the city would be able to step in and put a lien on the property for the costs incurred in that. South Pass has an unusual and somewhat interesting variation on Pasadena. They want to rebuild to what was previous and then put a 5-year prohibition. And they haven't invoked this ever. These are all, I should say, this is rare. Los Angeles has only invoked it a couple of times. Pasadena has at least a couple of, less than a handful, I'd say. South Pass says they haven't done it, so they don't exactly know how they would enforce this. But then they add an interesting provision that they don't want to see parking or other financially remunerative uses on the vacant site.
Has it happened in South Pass?
I don't think so.
So that is a deterrent.
I don't know that we can draw that conclusion, but it could be, yeah.
Have we had a lot of illegal demolitions in Glendale?
Not that I'm familiar with. We had the partial demolition of one of the car dealers, the Art Deco car dealership where Cars 911 used to be, and then obviously 1420 Valley View, and I'm not familiar with others. So, and then we looked at West Hollywood, which has a rebuild to the previous appearance condition, and Santa Monica follows LA pretty much. Both LA and Santa Monica record an affidavit with the county so that if someone did the demolition and then sold the property, once it's recorded with the county, that goes with the property records, so the new owner would know that there's this prohibition, and theoretically that factors into the valuation of the property when you're making that transaction. So we looked at these and we thought, oh, these are all good ideas. So my sense was let's balance this out, figure out which of these we want to pull from, propose the whole group as something that we should do. So breaking this down, we kind of presented it to councils. We have a toolkit. We have different options that other cities have developed. They're all have pros and cons. So we looked at these. In thinking about the prohibition of development permits, which is a pretty major one, we thought that it was a strong financial deterrent. The longer the period, the greater the deterrence, but the con was that the longer the parcel stays vacant, the longer it stays vacant in a neighborhood or in a business district or wherever. So my recommendation was that we go with the 3-year prohibition, sticking with what we currently have, but adding to that some of these other things so that we would have the 3 years, which is a penalty, but then we move forward with some of the other concepts to really enhance the deterrence value. Thinking about reconstruction, I kind of broke this down into 2 things. There's the reconstruction that might come after a full, complete demolition of a house or a building, and then there's reconstruction after a partial demolition or possibly demolition by neglect, depending on how far that went. So In terms of full house demolition, we thought, well, if we rebuild as it was, it's going to resemble the property pretty closely to what was there. It would avoid impacts on the adjoining properties because it would be the same size as what was there before. And so we thought those were pros. The con is that reconstruction is difficult to do well. And in today's architectural environment, architects don't have the training to do this. I spoke with Pasadena, which has one example where they had a house that was rebuilt. It was a tremendous amount of effort to kind of get that done.
That was in Bungalow Heaven, wasn't it?
I don't actually know. Well, the street started with a P, but I can't remember, so it might have been. Actually, it looked, when I saw the picture, it looked like it. I just didn't put it together. So there was concern about if we say you have to rebuild 1420 to look like it did, are we really going to get those cedar shingles? Are we really going to get all of the details we're looking for? There's also kind of a philosophical con to that, which is we're creating a new historic building. We're trying to bring back the dead, but it's never going to be the same. So I kind of split my recommendation to council where I said we should not rebuild as was for total demolition, but for partial demolition, if someone's stripping character-defining features off a building, if someone's stripping a wing off of a building where we can pretty much reattach that and get it back, I think we could be comfortable with that. But for full demolition, we actually added a new concept, which is different from any of the other cities. And to reduce the financial incentive, if a property isn't built out to its full development potential, we provided an option that the new structure is going to have the same footprint, the same height, and the same square footage. So that it could be in a new style, which is going to go through design review, whether it's with the commission or the board, depending on where it's located. But we have control over how that design comes out. It doesn't prohibit someone from trying to rebuild close to what was there. But we thought if we kind of use these parameters of keeping the building envelope really close to what it was, that reduces the incentive. The con that I put in here was that it could, depending on the design, it's going to be a change, and neighbors sometimes are very used to what was there and might prefer to see that come back, but so it could be a little disruptive. But we did go with this recommendation. A few of these were kind of no-brainers. We need to include districts. We need to include eligible surveyed properties. So we recommended that that be added into the ordinances. Same thing with substantial alterations and demolition by neglect. I couldn't really think of any cons for those concepts. Same with affirmative maintenance of the vacant site during the 3 or 5 or whatever year period it would be. Same with the parking recommendation that we took from council. And then we added something based on input from the Historical Society and other people in the community who were talking about, well, that little slap on the wrist, $1,000 fine isn't much of an incentive. So we kind of added the idea that we might be able to increase civil fines. So it wouldn't be the criminal penalty, it would be a civil fine. We didn't really put a number on it, and we'll work that out as we move forward with this. The problem with fines is that if you have a fine and that's all you have, then it's the cost of doing business, and it's not really a deterrent at all. So I made the strong recommendation to council that if they entertain a new fine, that it's only in conjunction with these other things, and I'll jump ahead. They agreed. So that worked well. And ultimately, staff directed us to basically follow the laundry list of staff recommendations, rewrite the code sections to include all of these features. If that's done, I think we'll have the strongest demolition deterrence policy in the area. And so we can't really talk about it now. It's not something to get your opinion on at this point, but we will bring it back, obviously. And so this gives you time to kind of ruminate. It's going to be probably a few months before we get this done and ready to go back to council. But I was pretty pleased ultimately with the discussion that we had with council, and that there was interest and ultimately buy-in, recognizing that this is a real issue and that we're only applying it, very infrequently. So it's not, this draconian, widespread gesture that we're imposing on people, but when people do things illegally like that have such a big impact on the community, they need to kind of recognize that they did something wrong, have some punitive qualities, and then also the deterrent potential. So that's that.
So what happened to the Valley View property, the owner? I mean,
Are you allowed
It's in court right now.
Oh, it's in court, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's a very slow process, so
But the
I have no.
property is vacant, right? I mean, cleared.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
here we go. We'll end with a little sad reminder of what can happen here, so.
What was the year of the house?
Actually, this was taken,
1914.
this was taken, I think, wasn't it earlier?
I don't think so.
I thought it was, oh wait, you might, I'm sure you're right. I thought
He
it
used
was-
to ride by it on his bike, Jay. I'm sure he knows what year it was made,
I saw
built.
the old man waving.
The house that was on Ben Lomond, in 1959, I had my, you know.
Wouldn't be a meeting without a story from
Forrest
Mike.
Gump. We had our Cub Scout meetings there.
Really?
Yeah, in 59.
You
Wow.
always have a story.
The Dickens people
Complete now,
lived
we had
there.
a Mike Morgan story.
Well, I'm glad we're taking we appear to be taking the lead on this, so thank you.
$1,000 fine is a little.
We're trailblazers here in Glendale,
That's
let's be
right.
real.
I would
Not
increase the fine.
No, council was interested in that, so.
If you build a house roughly $100 per square foot, it should be $1,000 per square foot fine.
Well, one of the council members discussed a per square foot fine. I did jump in and say I didn't think that was fair. You know, a demolition of a 1,000 square foot house is just as destructive to the community and our fabric as a 2,000 square foot house. So I didn't know that we could make that, but it would be a more substantial fine than what we have right now.
The only drawback is that in the waiting period, the property always appreciates.
Mm-hmm.
And so the longer you wait, whoever the owner is not really losing money.
Well, they are, because they're,
Yeah.
in theory,
They're paying a mortgage.
paying a mortgage, which really
No, they're just paying a property
happens when the
tax.
house is gone. No, they're paying mortgage, depends on what they paid for
Well,
the
unless
property
they
and all
paid
that.
cash for the
They
property.
paid
but-
cash the property, and depending on their conditions.
In theory, they're still renting another home somewhere or owning another home
Exactly.
somewhere.
And
They've
it's
lost
not
a
much
lot
of
of
a
time.
deterrent.
It's not. There definitely should be a penalty, a financial penalty on top of
Yeah.
everything else. Okay, good job.
I would assess the
right.
tax.
Okay, so we'll call for adjournment in honor of all veterans of all wars
From Glendale.
From Glendale.
from Glendale
Only from Glendale.
Well, maybe.
and from everyone.
Maybe kind of everybody else.
That's the national holiday. We're the Glendale.
Glendale's good.
Okay.
Thank everyone for their service.